I was 15 years old at church camp when my good friend Jeff pulled out a cassette of Soldiers Under Command by the Christian glam metal band Stryper. That's Stryper, with a Y and a P for the AI transcribing this intro. That sentence is so full of everything you needed to know about my world at age 15, it's not even funny. Things like church camp were about as wild as things got for me in the Canadian prairies, a ridiculously low number of responsible adults, and a lot of free time. But the introduction of the forbidden Pied Pipers and Stryper via cassette was next level. I knew my parents would not approve. Yellow and black shredded spandex holding machine guns, the album cover made me feel things. It was my gateway drug into metal, 80s metal. I was about a year away from Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet mega record, a year and a half from Poison's Talk Dirty to Me on Much Music, and still 2 full years away from GNR's Appetite for Destruction, destroying every headbanger on the west side of Regina, Saskatchewan. AC/DC's Who Made Who and Shook Me All Night Long became the soundtrack of the boys' locker room. I was fully immersed. It was the sound of rebellion. I had to tap dance around it a lot to my conservative Christian parents, justify whether Stryper, with a Y and a P, could truly be Christians. I eventually bought and sold Van Halen's 5150 record 3 times out of Christian guilt. Rebellion resonated with me. We were all looking for identity. Punk hadn't really swept the Canadian prairies, though SNFU was making regular stops that made the top of the buzz on the following Monday mornings. While punk had the perception of reckless abandon right down to its playing, metal had an integrity housed in its angst, birthing dozens of periodicals like Guitar Player magazine to enshrine its champions. The guitar hopeful in me was totally baited. Stryker, with an I and a K, is an Edmonton-based metal band formed in 2007, which Wikipedia has indulgently labeled everything from thrash to speed to power to the classic heavy. Those are all in air quotes, by the way. They have toured the globe, releasing 7 full-length albums, winning Canada's top prize, a Juno, in 2020 for Heavy Metal Album of the Year. They have professed that they have traditionally had more in common with the style of legends, Iron Maiden, for most of their career, until shedding expectations with the latest release, Ultra Power, and putting a little more late 80s straight-ahead glam into the mix, and taking this former headbanger back to his Regina roots. My name is Glenn Erickson. This is Almost Famous Enough. Thanks for spending your time with us. This is Stryker. Welcome, Dan Cleary, Tim Brown of the band Stryker, Edmonton-based Canadian metal band Stryker, which is like coming up on 20 years, I just realized, because I'm always surprised that we just turned the page for 2026 here, which means you're a year away from what you would call official 20 years. Do you call 2007 your official start, like Wikipedia and every other website?
Yeah, it's kind of like that's like the first inception of the band, right? Like that was like right out of high school. Yeah. So we weren't really doing anything in 2007. It was more just like that's when we decided to be a band. So the first thing we ever really put out wasn't until like 2010, I guess. So we just screwed around for like 3 years and then finally did something.
Which isn't terribly different than the history of most bands starting out, right? Like, can I assume, was that like high school age? Like, where were you at in life when that was happening, Dan? Dan, I should also say you're the OG, right? Like you're the one OG member, right? So where in life was that happening for you? Was that typical high school, let's do this?
Yeah, that was so we graduated in 2006. 2007 when the band formed, that was just like right after high school, and we had a band in high school, just a few a few different members, and like, yeah, so this was like the new band that we formed after that other band had kind of disbanded. And yeah, it was just high school friends, typical kind of band start.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, 2007, it's funny, right? Because like you said, like, yeah, we just screwed around for a while. Probably we're doing the typical thing, just trying to get good, good enough to feel proud enough to go out. And then you're trying to get gigs and finding out where can we actually play, and we'll, and all of that, like that can get spread out over a few years pretty quick for a band starting up. But I mean, almost 20 years is a long time. Like, so you guys have played obviously all around the world, spent a lot of time in Europe, and crossed over in through a lot of different scenes in a lot of different places, I assume. Is longevity a hallmark of metal bands, or is it the opposite, or is it just sort of somewhere in between, like a lot of genres? Or where does longevity sit in the metal spectrum?
I mean, I think it's pretty common. I think like you see a lot of bands in metal who just like, I mean, like Anvil is a good example. Just go forever, right? Like, so I don't know. I think it's interesting because when I think about like 20 years, doing it for 20 years seems insane. Like
there's a lot of there's a lot of bands that are doing like 40 and 50th anniversary tours. I mean, isn't Scorpions doing 50 or something? And Judas Priest is, I think, doing a 50th or something.
Yeah, that's a long time. I mean, even if you look at the show that Metallica just put on the last time they come around, for the amount of years they've been doing it, that's a pretty intense thing to still be doing at that level for as long. I mean, I think all of us would believe that like Lemmy would still be playing if he was alive. It's right.
Yeah.
So he probably wouldn't have quit either. What about like, so you guys have been able to see a lot of the more, I mean, I think this is interesting, and I'm going to want to get your take on it. Like, I would call it just the indie metal scene, but I think, and I'm guessing the indie and what you would call indie in metal is very different than some of the other adjacent genres around it. And there seems to be a pretty large, what I call middle with independent. Like, there's a lot of pretty major independent labels in metal, right? That, is that an accurate take for the metal genre, that there's like some pretty prominent labels that in the mainstream still get classified probably as major independent, still not sort of part of the big major label scene? Is that an accurate assumption, or is that not an accurate assumption at all?
I mean, yeah, I'd say so. I think there's a lot of like well-intentioned people who start record labels because they're like super into it, right? Like they're into the music, they want to be involved. Maybe they're not in a band, but they're, they want to be a part of it in some ways. I think there's a lot of like, especially in Europe, there's a ton of like smaller record labels that do, the like traditional, especially like in traditional metal, that has like a pretty hardcore following that, without those sort of indie labels, no bands would ever press CDs, right? Because it's like, it'd be kind of like niche sounding bands that, probably never will have like mass appeal necessarily, but they do have appeal to like this specific niche of, traditional heavy metal or something like that. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of those out there for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, this is something I like to do usually anyhow, is I like to kind of go back. I kind of started by asking you, about, coming up on 20 years. Obviously that's a long time. So I kind of like to go back, help me kind of get to know how all of this developed to get you to who you are right now. And as well as obviously for the listeners. And this is fun for me because obviously my normal, the path that I've gone through in my career kind of lends me to a lot of people to bring on the podcast that are pretty adjacent to the genres and the social circles and all of in the music industry and all that. And metal's been outside of that for me. So this is great. This is fantastic. And that's why I really appreciate you guys coming on to do this. But my past, because I'm an older gentleman who grew up in the 80s listening to 80s metal, like heavily influenced. So it's kind of fun for me because it just taps back into a part that was just such a huge part of my teenage development years. And so it's, you know, it's always present. It's always there. Anyhow, and there's been a resurgence on TikTok of a bunch of some of these things, which has been kind of fun lately too. But I think we'll touch on that a little bit because like the last album in 2024, obviously the press gives it a lot of references, and I'd like to find out sort of your take on what your approach was on that too. But going all the way back, so you said 2007, you form out of high school, you've been kind of messing around, probably doing, like you said, the typical things a band does, just trying to get good and good enough to get shows and then get people out to shows, and then sort of do the typical, how do we build, you know, whether your aspirations are actually a big career or just the next show or legitimacy or something, whatever that like first few objectives are when you're a band. Can I even get a show outside of my hometown? You know, when does that happen? All of those things. So there's a few different things on the internet. You guys probably are well aware of this, about what your actual quote unquote first release was. Sort of most of them point towards 2010 or Eyes in the Night. Is that like your first official release? Was that self-released? Was that with what was the thing? I know that I read about you made contact with a guy in Germany, German label stuff. How did it sort of develop where you got to that step of when you're making that record, first releases, and kind of get that ball rolling? How did that sort of come together for you guys?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So like the first EP that we put out was Road Warrior was the title.
Okay.
After the movie. And so we recorded like a demo version of it just like at home on our own, and just because I mean that's just sort of like, you know, the DIY studio stuff was getting a little bit more accessible around that time. So we were just like, well, we'll just do it ourselves. You know, we'll record a demo and just.
That's like 2009-ish?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So what was the equipment? What was the DIY? I'm sorry, sidebar. I'm curious what you were recording on.
Yeah, we used like, I can't remember. I had some sort of, I bought like a mixing desk thing, and it was like a Pro Tools like audio thing. And,
okay, yeah.
So like, and we recorded the drums, but I remember that thing was so bad, like it would clip. Like, I don't know, it wasn't supposed to be for drums or something like that. It would everything clipped on it. It was just like, I don't know, it wasn't great. But anyways, we managed to figure it out and recorded a demo. And we had a friend of ours who was like big on the traditional metal, our buddy Clayton, and he would go to Europe all the time for like the metal festivals there, like, you know, go to Wacken and stuff like that. And I gave him the MP3 files, and I remember he had like this old school MP3 player, and he ended up taking it with him. I think it was either 2008 or 2009, took that demo with him. And, you know, he was just excited to have like a band from his hometown doing that type of music. So he showed it to a bunch of people, and then a bunch of people were super interested in it. Because I think that's a very, like, you know, it's fun to like find the underground up and coming bands or whatever, and you know, that kind of thing. So, but one of the people he showed was one of the people that ran the label that did our first EP. And I mean, at the time, I don't think we were taking it that seriously. We were kind of just like, you know, this is fun, we're doing it. And I mean, like, what are the chances that this is going to be like, you know, something we could do like in any capacity, you know?
Yeah.
So when they were interested in it, you know, they were going to like sign us to a record deal basically. And we released the first two. So the EP and then the first full length, the Eyes in the Night album with them. The label was called Iron Codex, and like that, they're not around anymore. I mean, they weren't that great to deal with. They were like, okay. And, you know, we got the albums out and, you know, sold a few copies, and they pressed vinyl, which was really cool. But yeah, that was sort of like the start. That was sort of the, you know, sort of like the springboard for us to be like,
yeah,
somebody actually wants to put this music out? And we're like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And then just kind of went from there.
Well, I have the curiosity about that, right? Which is, I mean, a common thread through no matter what genre or style or whatever people are developing, especially when they're late teens, early 20s, so much of, I think it gets built off of what version of validation we get for what we're doing, right? Like little pop stars, it's often their like family that's just, and they maybe have, you see it's common stories that they have big families and sort of, or they were all churchgoers and they got to sing in church and they got all that validation. Like some version of a thing like made people think like, yeah, maybe we're actually good at this, right? And I don't know what it was for you guys that you were playing early 20s, very beginning of that age, and whether you were getting a lot of validation here in Edmonton, either from the scene or from just people you knew, or what was sort of driving you? Because the validation of having, a European record label guy want to put your music out, that's got to feel like a big leap, a big jump. What kind of things were happening for you guys here in Edmonton that were making you feel like it was legit for you?
Yeah, like we had a pretty good scene going in Edmonton. That was back in the day when there was that old venue, the Mead Hall, and so Tim was in a band. Tim wasn't in the band like in Striker at the time, but he was in Six Gun, which is his band, and we would play with them all the time. And there was quite a few different bands who kind of right at the same time were all sort of interested in the same style of music, like a bit more of the like 80s influenced heavy metal stuff. And I mean, mostly the scene in Edmonton at the time was like death metal, and it wasn't like doing like a clean vocals metal band that sounds like Iron Maiden wasn't really like a popular thing at the time. Like it was like we would play, and if there was another band, it would be a death metal band unless it was Tim's band. And then so yeah, but I mean, as far as like the validation goes, like we were all like stoked. And when we had like a little group of bands that kind of came together at the same time, and we were all kind of the same age. So just out of high school, and then like, it's fun to go play shows, drink beer, like, everybody kind of like partied together and went to the same parties and stuff like that. And then, like definitely getting the record label interested was sort of like a legit validating thing for us, because I don't think we even considered like that as a possibility. Like we should give this to a record label or something. We were just like doing it for fun, right? So
yeah. Did it noticeably change how you felt you were being perceived here at home? Like I've often noticed in Edmonton, like when bands get outside recognition, the cred here at home seems to just jump a few levels so quickly. Were you feeling that inside of the scene, or was it not as a big a deal inside of the local scene?
That's a good question for Tim.
I remember, when they got signed, obviously before I joined the band, there was, that was like the hot news in our small little scene. Like everyone's like, whoa, I can't believe they got signed. So, I mean, at least for us, we're late teens, early 20s kind of people. Everybody there isn't really much of a history or like legitimate, should I say, like professional touring scene from Edmonton for heavy metal. I mean, there's a couple bands that were, had some level of success in the past before, like Disciples of Power was a good one, but that, more than a decade before us, or like White Wolf from the 80s with Cam McLeod, who helped Stryker record Eyes of the Night. So, I mean, there wasn't too many other bands that come to mind, but I think it's maybe a little more, there's more examples of it now. Like I'm helping out other bands like with their US touring visas and stuff these days. So I think it's a little bit more common. At the time, it was something very unique and special. So I think everybody around the scene was a little bit jealous.
Did you feel like we were lording over you guys? Did you ever get that from us?
Yeah, you guys were the kings of the castle.
Well, I mean, part of why I asked that is like I said before, like I had noticed that in a number of different genres, just because I was the chair of the board for Alberta Music around that time. I was heavily involved with, the AFA with granting, and even with Factor with granting, and different sort of like contests and award things. And so you see names from all the genres come across your desk, and you try to like tap in and know who's doing what. And I honestly was pretty oblivious to where metal bands were playing. And by metal bands playing, I meant like other touring bands, like other than the big stadium obvious, million selling album acts. I'm talking about those middle acts. Like I didn't know where they were playing, and I had probably at that point very much prided myself on thinking I knew our scene in Edmonton like through and through. And I realized through getting more involved in some of those organizations and associations that I did not know, like where were the venues, where were the bands playing, and other bands coming through is so influential, right, on a scene developing themselves and seeing what's possible and believing what's possible. And I remember working with like a young hip hop artist who was like, the Canadian history of development was like you get on the road and you start playing all these shit clubs, up and down the number one and around, and everywhere you can, you go back and forth over and over and over and over and over and again. And it kind of got glorified in the country as the way, but that's like a band development, right? And like a hip hop artist had nowhere to go. They would often tell me, it's like, I can't just go out and play a whole bunch of shows. Like I have to sing national anthems and I have to play in the mall, with a bunch of kids and all this other crappy shit. And I wondered like how good the scenes were for getting out of your own town and knowing places to be able to go and play and grow and develop. And so you guys signed with a German label. Was it a quick thing? Did you move into the trying to find places and play and make mini tours back and forth across Canada? Was that the next step from you right then? Or was it a jump to trying to get to play overseas pretty quick, or did that come a little later?
We did get like the opportunity to go over there like pretty quickly. I think it's because there is that like sort of matured scene over there for that type of music, especially like the 80s flavored heavy metal. It's like there's such a diehard group of fans over there that like they have whole festivals sort of based around that. And then even there was this festival in Spain where they sort of took like membership fees from a bunch of people. So it's like you could be part of this. It was called the Pounding Metal Union, and they would if you join it, you have to pay fees, and the fees go towards booking bands to come play the festival every year. So they have this sort of like collective of like hardcore fans who are sort of helping subsidize this festival that they put on, which we ended up, that was the first show we ever played in Europe, was in Spain for the Pounding Metal Festival. And that's how we got over there, was like they have these people who are kind of like hardcore fans who are paying money to like more than just the ticket price, right? Like they're paying like it's like union dues, basically.
Union dues to have access and have a good product to also enjoy, like a fancy co-op of some sort. I mean, I touched on it before, having heard your name around that time through a couple of different ways. I'm always so interested in like local legend kind of stuff. You guys kind of joked between each other about perceptions about what was going on, because Tim wasn't in the band yet and what other bands thought. But so from an outside of the metal scene perspective, like over the course, I would say, of probably 2012 through 2015, 16, I guess you guys put out around 3 records over that span. You guys kind of had a little legendary status, I feel, around Edmonton and Alberta, particularly for playing so many festivals, and just this concept of like they're huge in Europe. And I know it can feel like a little pejorative, like a little later on in your career, of like that someone would boil down everything to like, if the name Striker came up in a conversation, people were like, oh yeah, they're huge in Europe, as if that's just where the conversation ends. But there is a fact that it built pretty, in a scene, and I'm talking not just the metal scene, the Edmonton music scene, pretty legendary status for a band to have achieved a lot of success over those years. And I'm just curious how it felt to you on the inside, right? So I'm talking about how an Edmonton scenster's perspective was. I know, Tim, you joined the band just shortly after that. I'm guessing, you put out an album in 2012. How soon after that, I'm not sure that you joined the band, Tim, but I'm just sort of wondering what your guys' perspective over that next few albums. I know you got signed to Napalm and sort of a bigger deal then, and the opportunities kept flowing. What was it like on the inside of sort of all of that happening and growing? Did it feel fast? Did it feel, a lot bigger than Edmonton? Like, was there the consideration that you needed to leave Edmonton? I'm curious about all of those things in such a big period of growth.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really thought it would be practical to leave Edmonton. I mean, I think it wasn't like we were making like crazy amounts of money or anything, like it's, I mean, even today, it's like the band feels more like a passion project than anything, right? Like I mean, we sort of do it to, because we like doing it. And like, it's definitely like a bit of like a drug, right? Of playing shows and that kind of thing. It's like really like going on tour is crazy exciting. And it's like, you definitely, when you come back home, it feels weird to be like, you're like, oh, okay, tour bus tour in Europe. And then you come home and you're just like, okay, time to like shovel the driveway or whatever, So it feels weird.
It takes a little while, right? To adjust back. Yeah. You feel like out of body for sometimes a week.
It's weird. And
more.
like, I know like a lot of people talk about like there's like a post-tour depression type of thing that hits where you're like, because you do like a month on tour and you have like this really solid routine of just like, and you're rewarded every night with like a cool experience, right? Like a big show or whatever, super exciting. And then you kind of come back home and you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
It's pretty common to be like,
dopamine addicts like me had a really hard time with it, because you're right. Like every night you're getting social interaction, social validation, people loving, commenting what you did, plus some terrible lows, like people not showing up at all for gigs. But at the end of it, you go through this whole thing with a group of people, really close proximity. And then you come back and all of a sudden you're not seeing those people every day. All of that stuff's gone. You're not being told you're great. You're being told, like you said, please go shovel the driveway. Yeah. So you got to take care of your cat again, stuff like that. Well, you kind of touched on a thing there too, I think, which is interesting to talk about, right? Which is that this perception of success, right? This perception that we're doing really, really well. We're doing really great. We signed with a German label, and then we've signed with, Napalm, who are really well known, and you're putting out albums, and you're regularly going back and playing some pretty big festivals in the scene in Germany and Europe. And the perception at home, whether it be Edmonton or Alberta or Canada even, and then, on the inside, I don't know if it's, you call it imposter syndrome, that maybe you've gone through the whole, like you said, you alluded to, like, we're not making a shit ton of money here, guys. We're still like pouring our lives into a thing and just hoping that it's enough to get us to the next one, maybe, or stuff like that. Was that a big thing for either of you, to have gone through like some version of the imposter syndrome of being in a band that looks like it's doing really well, and maybe you don't feel like it's as lucrative as everybody else feels, but you are in this game of attention and perception, and it's so important?
I don't think we really had any imposter syndrome necessarily. Like, we just do it because it's fun, and that's sort of really the only reason that we've always done it. I mean, I think if we could wave a magic wand, we of course would want to have this be our full-time career and, be huge like Metallica and headline stadiums every night, which we've, at the end of the day, that's where we point our business ship to try and do that. But I mean, I don't think we've ever really had any imposter syndrome. It was just like, hey, that was fun. I did what I do. Everybody just does what they do. I think we realized early on, like, I certainly remember when I was, for example, in high school, learning how to play guitar, I'd look at these, I'd learn the songs from Metallica or Iron Maiden and be like, that was easy. I could play guitar better than these nerds or whatever in these huge bands. And then, as I got a little older, it's like, wait, it doesn't matter, the technical skill. These people were the ones that created this. And they did it, 20 years ago when they didn't have the prototypes to do it. And that's where the real magic is. And then, so I think maybe at some point we matured, despite remaining hilariously immature and staying in a band, that we just kind of all sort of ended up having a similar mindset, at least, where I don't think that an imposter syndrome really even came up for us. Like you mentioned there, and we mentioned there's not a lot of, at least when we were, before in the pre-COVID times, there weren't a lot of touring metal acts in Alberta especially, but in Canada overall, I mean, we didn't really have many peers. Not saying that we were the best ever, but there weren't a lot of people where we could compare ourselves to. I mean, Skullfist from Toronto, who we played a lot of shows with and were, pals with, they're a good example of another band that's sort of similar to us, that we can say, hey, we're peers with that band. But I mean, Cauldron, that was another one. But I mean, there weren't too many. It's like, okay, we can name like two, and they're both from Toronto. There's a couple others, but I mean, Unleash the Archers, I guess, what is another one that's still doing really well. I mean, they're living the real life. they're like a real band, we did they were the headliner for a tour we did in Europe last year, and it's like, they're headlining 1,000-cap venues and they're sold out every night over in Europe. So I mean, maybe that's a better question for them, because they're the ones who are actually out there doing it.
Well, I think that like one of the things that can be difficult is like other people's perception versus like your reality. And then that's sort of like the in between of like, it's not so much that we feel like imposters or whatever. It's more that like, how do you explain, the difference in like the reality of things to someone who is like, you're in this band, so you must be like famous or whatever. That happens like occasionally. You'll talk to someone like, at the day job, the new guy says, so you must be like famous or whatever. And what do you say to that? You're like, no, dude, not really, but like more famous than you, but not by much.
Because we've slept on a lot of truck stops.
You're not explaining it just once, right? Like you're having to explain it, and you're taking in the context of who you're talking to every time, which somehow makes the answer shift and move. So there's not just like what you're alluding to, Dan, is there's not one singular answer to any of these. And that's kind of a silly question, right? Like to get like, you must be famous. Like you're right. Like you're like, how do I even answer that? Right. Or I've had the same thing, right? Where I've gone to the day job. I'm like 20 years removed from doing this kind of stuff. And then somebody finds out you used to play in a band that toured across the country and put out records and get on the radio and all that. And then, their mind immediately opens up to whatever version that means for them. Right. And all of a sudden they're trying to fit you into that. And sometimes it can feel very uncomfortable trying to think,
I don't like
what
that
are they
at all.
fitting me into?
It's such a strange experience to like, to talk. And like, I mean, I don't know. I think like we're pretty, I guess, humble about it. Like I'm not volunteering that information up. Like maybe that's my problem. I should be more of like a rock star like that. Maybe that'd be better. But I think we're pretty like just regular guys. So it feels super weird to like brag about anything to anyone really,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people have the, like, you say you're in a touring metal band and they think, oh wow, they must be like Motley Crue, there must be groupies every night. And it's so funny. It's the complete opposite. I mean, just like, oh yeah, there must be so many girls at your show. It's like, well, no, there maybe was one, and 99% of the other people are like fat old dudes.
No offense to our fans.
No offense to our fans. But I mean, it's not what you think it is. It's like, oh wow, you must be like doing drugs and destroying hotel rooms. And it's like, well, no, we stepped in a truck stop after driving 8 hours to get to the next venue. And it's like, and then the next night it's like, oh yeah, we, just slept in the van. It's not what you think it is. We're basically homeless on the road.
The thing is, it's fun though. That's the thing. It's like we're still having fun, and like it's still so worth it for us. But like that maybe isn't like the most glamorous thing for someone else to like, if their expectation is like, whoa, this must be such a crazy lifestyle. It's like, it is a crazy lifestyle, but not in the way you're thinking it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. As I always, it sounds like you would relate to the thing that usually makes me the most uncomfortable is when somebody's like, give me a crazy story from the road. And I'm like, oh shit, man. Like, I can't even think of, you know what I mean? Maybe I've recycled it down to maybe 2 that may legitimately land in any audience, but everyone's expecting exactly what you just described. They're expecting that just off the cuff, I can be like, well, just last week, blah, blah, blah. You know, this crazy thing happened, as if we're, part of those rockumentaries that kind of glorify, especially that. And this is another thing you guys can qualify for me. That perception of the lifestyle, which seemed mostly glorified literally in the 80s and maybe like a 10 to 15 year span of metal, right, has sort of locked in, to a lot of metal bands sort of through a number of the adjacent subgenres. Is that an accurate perception of that people have sort of locked a lot of assumptions about metal and metal, what it's like to be in a metal band from that kind of era that's sort of still flaunted?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like, we've had a lot of crazy stories. Like, we've done a lot of crazy stuff. And like, because it's like a heavy metal band is still like, a bunch of dudes who like to drink beer and party and stuff like that. So like, I mean, we got a lot of funny like things that have happened, but it's never like that Motley Crue book, The Dirt. I think that might have been the thing that like, so many people read that book and then half of it's lies. It's just like, they just, or maybe it's like part of the story happened and then just like made it like it became a legend and it just like things get added to it or whatever. But
was anybody sober enough to have actually recounted it properly?
Yeah, nobody knows.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes for a great book, but it's how much of it's really true? I'm sure they did a lot of crazy stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, but you're definitely right, though. I think that's people's perception is just like, oh, you did like this rock star lifestyle, and it was like so crazy. And it's like, man, it's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah,
literally.
That's, how many times that's come up from like all different types of artists that I've talked to, that is literally the statement that comes up. You don't understand what the road is like, is basically driving and waiting. And like, and then people put their entire perception on this like 45 to 60 minutes that they see you. And the rest of it is all that other waiting and driving stuff that becomes the life, right? So it really becomes like who you guys are together, right? Not all the other perception stuff of what you're trying to create or who you are on stage. It really becomes for you guys all of that time that you have to spend together, driving and waiting and planning and building and practicing and recording, all the things that you're investing this crazy amount of time in. So number one, as I found it really cool and amazing just for you to say, Dan, like, we're still having a lot of fun. That's why we're still doing this. Cause like, again, almost 20 years in, most people are starting to say, I'm too old for this shit. Like, you guys started the band out of high school. Quick math tells me you guys are starting to stare down 40, probably a number of you, right? That phase of life where a lot of people are starting to say, I'm too old for this shit. So if you're still having fun and doing the things that are fun about it, and makes me think of some of the guys I play hockey with every week who I think they're there just because the time in the locker room makes them feel like when they were 17 again with a bunch of boys. So I kind of get where that comes from in a lot of ways. I guess where I want to ask you about, there's 2 places I want to go, and I'm afraid I'll forget one if I rabbit hole the other one. But just to put a pin on the whole perception thing, like, you guys did this run through you recorded a bunch of albums all the way from your self-titled Striker to Play to Win 2018. Then you get the Juno Award, the the Canadian Grammy for best metal band. What was that experience like? Did you go? I didn't look it up. Did you actually go down and attend? I don't know where the Junos were.
No, that was during COVID. So it was a video call,
right.
basically.
Yeah, that's right after COVID broke that it would have been scheduled.
We were packing it because we were supposed to play at the Junos and perform at Juno Fest.
Oh man,
we had like a TV appearance on like a news channel and all this other shit, and it was in Saskatoon, I think, or Regina. Anyways, so we're like literally packing up our trailer to get ready to leave, and then we start seeing the like texts and the tweets coming in where it's like, oh no, the Junos are canceled. This just in, everybody from Universal Music has canceled their flights. No one from Universal's coming. Then you see another tweet. Everyone from Sony's canceling. It's like, oh shit. You just see all these cancellations. And then like later, I think the next day was like the federal lockdown. And like our publicist, John Asher, he's from Montreal. And so he's flying in. So we wake up to a text from him saying, hey guys, I'm getting on the plane. I'm flying in. We're like, okay, have a good flight. We're just packing up. Talk to you, see you later tonight, basically. And then we're packing up. He's in the air. This is before they had free texts on planes. He lands. The Junos are canceled, and basically the whole country is locked down. We get a text. He's like, man, I just landed. What the fuck happened? The Junos are canceled.
Yeah, he landed in Calgary, too. Like, he had to fly to Calgary and then connect back.
Yeah.
So,
oh, man.
So they sent him back. And, I mean, for us, we were just packing our trailers. So we just unpacked everything. And it was like, okay, well, see you guys. See you guys after lockdown. So that was a very underwhelming Juno experience.
Yeah, it probably, like, sadly kind of sucks some of the life out of the win, right? Like, it's a big thing, but all these other things that you were expecting to be able to do as a part of it, which probably would have made that really, really special, got taken out of it. Does a Junos win on the resume for a metal band in Canada move the needle anywhere with anything?
Not really. We mostly used it to make fun of Unleash the Archers. And then they won, so we can't.
But we won first.
We won first.
Yeah. So
we also got nominated for a third time when we were on tour. Right before the tour started, the Juno announcements came out, and I remember we were driving over to the hotel to meet them where the bus is, and we're just like waiting, and then it's like, oh, the updates are out. We had a list of we had internal bets in the band of what the nominees list was going to be. Everybody thought Unleash the Archers would going to get nominated, and then they weren't. We're just like, oh shit. Walk to the hotel, just start roasting them immediately.
Just a little friendly competition.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to be disparaging of it, but I just know that for a lot of people, like it's an honor to get recognized always. That's like our country's, awards and the category being recognized. I also know that there's, you have to hold on one hand, that it is an honor that we're being thought of in these ways. And then on the other hand, knowing how much does it actually move the needle and the reality of that. Sometimes they don't line up. They're not always aligned. So it can feel a little bit weird for some artists. So you ran your way all the way to that. And I feel like this is where I'm curious. And my question is, did it feel like you were on a straight run trajectory for the most part, besides the normal up and downs? You're in a sort of regular album release cycle, the way sort of that happens, and you're in publicity cycles with your albums. And right up to the pandemic that happens, you guys don't put out another record, right, until 2024 with Ultra Power. So it looks on the outside like the pandemic basically like almost killed things, with that kind of a 6-year gap. I'm wondering what actually was happening for you guys. Was there just a waiting it out? Was there always the plan? Were you always writing and getting Ultra Power together, or what was happening for you in that big gap?
Yeah, we so like probably the hardest part about the COVID stuff was like we had stuff booked, like a tour with Unleash the Archers was booked. Then it got postponed. So it would be like, okay, it was going to be in the spring. Now it's going to be in the fall. So you're like, okay, well, we're not going to do, maybe we didn't have time or we didn't quite have everything ready to go to do a new album. So it was like, okay, well, we'll wait until that tour, and then that tour comes and it's postponed again because of COVID. You know, it's like, so it's like a whole like extra year of time just because all the touring stuff is planned so far in advance. And then if it gets disrupted at all, it's like a whole other, you know, 6 months, 3 to 6 months of planning to like reschedule it. And that's like also during like pretty uncertain times for venues too. So it was like, what does a tour look like right now? And with, you know, are these venues going to be even open at the time when we actually go for the tour? And so yeah, and then on top of that, like, so that waiting and rescheduling, and everybody kind of just like puts their life on hold to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this other thing because we're going to go on tour in 3 months, and then that gets, you know, pushed back. That sort of stressed the band quite a bit, just in terms of like, you know, everybody wants to like live their life, and everybody was kind of just like waiting, like we said before, it's more waiting. So
yeah.
But during COVID, like the band almost broke up, or like pretty much did, but then it kind of was like, you know, there's a lot of factors, but eventually we sort of circle back to it, and we're just like, oh, like, do we want to do it? Like, yes, you know.
Yeah.
And especially because it's like once you could actually see like the light at the end of the tunnel from the pandemic stuff, it was sort of like, you know, you kind of look at it and say like, okay, so presumably things are going to get back to normal. Do we want to keep going? And then everybody was sort of on the same page by that point.
When you say like the band almost broke up, I just recognize that the question for me is like, was that through actual, like, we talked about it? Because some bands, they don't even talk about it. Maybe 2 or 3 members are talking together about whether they're still in it or not. And sometimes it's just a long gap of time that nothing's happening, that sort of bands just drift apart, and which is different than a real like formal conversation. Like, what do you guys think? Like, what's next? Do you think we're really going to do that? What version of that? Because it's the added uniqueness of the reason and all the uncertainty around the pandemic. Was it actual conversations happening between you guys about whether you think this thing keeps going or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think we fully bailed on it, didn't we? We for like a month or two, I think.
Yeah, I think we did kind of like all of the above, because I mean, in the depths of COVID, I mean, you hear so many stories of people in the industry in general, the music industry, just leaving the industry. Because I mean, the music industry is basically being a sinking ship for the last 20, 30 years. So, I mean, it's hard if you want to have any sort of career advancement or whatever, you know, get on with your life. If you're a booking agent or you work at a label or whatever, you know, it's been hard for all kinds of people in the industry, not just the artists, but especially the artists. And, you know, so many people are just like, well, I'm going to be a welder or something, you know, not that anyone became a welder over COVID, but yeah, it's just kind of like other priorities kind of creep in your life, because it's like you can't do music in the same way anymore. And then everything's canceled and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? So we just kind of, I don't know. I think COVID was hard for everybody, and it, especially us included in that context. And it's just kind of like, well, you know, if this is the future of live music, do we still want to do it? You know, and for us, we've been independent for so long, so that means we have to do everything. So for us, when there's a canceled tour, that means, you know, collectively between us, that's, you know, a couple 100 hours worth of work just flushed down the toilet for nothing. Whether it's work visas, grant writing, you know, promo planning, writing business plans, advertising, writing up copy, and doing all this other stuff. Because a lot of times we get ads and whatever all locked and loaded, and then you get your pre-release schedule and you put it up, you know, you schedule everything. It's like, oh, tour's canceled, pull all that stuff down, cancel all the ads. It's like, okay, well, there goes a ton of work. You know, you take promo videos, photos, all this other stuff, and it's like, okay, well, shit. So it's just a lot of work with no payoff, especially at that point, which I think everybody found really disheartening.
Yeah, I mean, that's I mean, obviously it's a common story, and I'm not even sure how much kind of the regular public has even heard the depths to which the reality of that is for literally everybody involved. That all of your work and efforts and hours were literally just discarded in an instant or a moment, or the number of pillars of the industry that really in essence is built around bringing people together. And then we're in a world where people aren't allowed to be together. Nobody can book a show because shows are about bringing people together. So everybody's jobs are being affected, and everybody's life was being put on hold with absolute uncertainty. And our, venues were closing left, right, and center, obviously, which would really affect people's ability to make plans even for the future. And probably the biggest, mind fuck of the whole thing, for lack of a better term, was the way things kept opening / closing in air quotes throughout that whole time, and giving false hope, and then people starting and stopping and having things shut down part way through starting again. Definitely took the wind out of sails for a lot of people. So you released your latest album that's out, and you released that in 2024. Was that music, like, were you writing the songs for Alter Power closer to 2024, or had the things on that, had you started it? Was that sort of the things you were planning all the way back to coming out of the last album in 2018 and going through that cycle and then planning for the next one? Did you just carry that through, or is that sort of a new batch? Because it feels like a bit of a departure, not a huge departure, but it's a fresh approach with some changes that I think were distinct for Stryker, if I'm not wrong, on that album, stylistically, musically. So I'm curious whether it was like a fresh start coming out of the pandemic, or whether that was the direction you had been planning to go all along.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a new, it's almost like, how like they say, your first album, you have all this time to write it, and then the follow-up's always harder because you don't have like all this time to do stuff. And it's like, well, we had all this time to mess around and try different stuff. And I think we were definitely a little just looser with like what we like, in the past we've been like worried about how people will perceive what we're doing, right? Like, because it's specifically in metal, it's like how you look and how you sound are very specific. And if it's not this, if it's not power metal and it's thrash metal, or it's classic heavy metal, or it's like there's these genre sort of like subgenres that kind of have their own fan base, and they're not always overlapping as much as they should probably. It's like the difference between the power metal song about dragons and the thrash metal song about the whatever, or is like literally just the topic of the song is different and the music's pretty similar, but it's like those are two completely different fan bases, so it's like we were for a long time pretty just concerned about like, this is the type of music we're kind of doing and we're trying to fit in this kind of thing. And then after the pandemic and stuff, we were just like, whatever, just do whatever. What do we want to do? Like, it is funny to see, like, we were like, we're gonna dress with more colors. It's like we're gonna be more colorful. And man, some of the expected backlash on it is like hilarious, because it's like you can clearly see that metal dudes are like, whoa, these guys are wearing a colorful shirt? That's too much, Like,
well, that was a question I was going to ask you guys. Yeah, I definitely was going to get to this. I mean, I would love to get some of your take on some of this stuff, but you just affirmed one of my questions that I was going to ask, which is, like, I grew up, like I told you before, I grew up in the 80s, right? And, so somebody's mom might make the horrible mistake and buy an Iron Maiden fan, like the newest Poison record. And that guy would be like, Mom, what the fuck? Cause in their, in public perception, like metal was just metal, right? And didn't understand just how religiously those lines were kept in the fan base. And I think my curiosity always growing up was, just how much the artists and the music creators were religiously keeping those lines themselves, or whether it was just the fans who can be, pretty crazy sometimes about, like what you said, like the perceptions thing we've already talked about, but metal has so many subgenres to me, like so many distinct subgenres that at best we can call them, it feels like adjacent, but you just sort of said like people like to keep these lines between them, even if they're what we would consider right next to each other and hold so many similarities. I got to host back in the fall. There was a thing called Music Day in Canada that was an initiative that's happening to try to promote live music events and kind of make it a whole feel like a Canadian experience across cities. The one here in Edmonton was a metal show, and I hadn't been exposed to the scene, like I said, since I knew about you guys back in 2012, 2013, 14. And so I'm meeting these bands and talking to them and finding out and watching who the kind of people who were coming, and they were like some pretty distinct styles between the bands that were being chosen, and it sort of brought that thinking back up for me. So I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit, like, because it seems to me like you had like an Iron Maiden kind of North Star in your early days, and there's probably a lot more other bands that you would list off in that way, but both the visuals, both your visual style and even your album cover art kind of had that kind of throwback to this, the dominant Eddie album cover art of the 80s. That was like, I grew up like here, you guys got to know this. Like I grew up in like what was called like the Headbanger School in Regina, Saskatchewan. So there was like the preppy school where my now wife went to, in my end of town, it was all, the shirts that you're wearing right now, Tim. But back then it was all the black shirts with the white 2/3, 3/4 sleeve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was all Quiet Riot, and it was all made in with, just the incredible Eddie art on it. And, and then the glam metal started to come in the later part of the 80s. And then you saw, people start using the word sellout in that whole area and stuff. And so I grew up with like GNR just blowing up, and I was in a guitar music class, and I was literally the only one who didn't wear those shirts, and the rest of them was all just the guys with the huge, I had pretty big hair too, but no, I was a poser compared to these guys. And they were all classical, like it was all classical nylon string guitars in our guitar class. And all of them were just fully carved with Slayer logos and stuff. It was pretty funny and pretty awesome. But back then I knew like, you don't cross these lines. Now it just feels like there's so many more genres since that period of time to now, obviously. So I'm wondering if you can just sort of quickly, like I had to look up last night, what was it called? The NWOBHM,
Oh yeah. New wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah. The new wave of British heavy metal. And I'm like, and as soon as I read it, oh, okay, I get it, right? Like what came out of, the predominant like Zeppelin-esque sounds, and then that in-between phase that became Iron Maiden or Venom or Motorhead, of course. And so as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, but I never heard this term. I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit sort of like where you guys feel like you had fit, what were sort of the other adjacent subgenres around you, and maybe how that's changed over the last, 15 years or so.
Yeah, we so I mean, like for the most part, we were sort of lumped into there's the new wave of traditional heavy metal, which became like a little subgenre with a bunch of different bands sort of doing the same kind of thing, sort of recreating that style of the new wave of British heavy metal. So it's like they made like this similar label for it and everything. But I mean, like as far as our band goes, like our influences were obviously we're into like thrash metal, like Metallica, Megadeth, Testament, that kind of thing. And then we were also into like the traditional heavy metal stuff like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Saxon, whoever. Also, we were into hair metal like Rat and that kind of thing too. So it was like, I mean, we were into all of that. So, because I mean, we didn't have a reason to be like, there was no like scene at school or anything like that. Like it wasn't like, oh, there's all the dudes who like hair metal and there's all the thrash guys. It's just like there's a few people who are really into metal and that's it. And it didn't matter what type of metal. It was like, those are the guys with long hair and there's like 10 of them tops or whatever, So like for us, we weren't really worried about, it was like, we just liked 80s metal, I guess. It didn't really matter like what style it was. But then once you start sort of thinking, we got to dress this, like how are we going to dress on stage or whatever? And we were kind of all over the place in the early days. Like, Tim was wearing spandex for a long time. And I mean, like, but spandex,
nice.
That's on the other side of the fence from the thrash guys. But our music sounded more thrash than it did like hair metal or something. So it's like, but then visually we would just do whatever. And it was just like a mix mashup of like all that sort of 80s stuff in general. And then I do think that there's some bands in our sort of scene that are way more compliant with the rules of how to look.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes their band is like, we're the guys who dress this exact way. Like, we're the glam metal band, or they're like the 80s thrash band, that type of thing. So
I mean, some other people in other genres might want to argue with me on this, but I have always really strongly felt like in metal, how you looked was so tightly perceived with how you were going to sound, right? You're right. If I saw a picture of the band and the guys on stage were wearing spandex, I immediately made assumptions about maybe what they were, but especially what they weren't, right?
Yeah.
Why maybe people would get uptight. So yeah, you coming out wearing what looks like the bright colored motocross gear outfits, in the new album, caused a bit of a stir just in general in the public, or even with who you felt was your fan base?
Yeah, like a great example is we played a festival in Chicago, and we read a review of the show someone posted. The guy didn't say a single thing about how we played or what we sounded like. He was just like, they look gay. That's what it was. Like, that's what he said. And we're just like, what is this? It's like, it was just so funny to see that like someone was just so lasered in on that. Like, didn't even talk about the set we played, and we played pretty good at that one. Like, so, nothing negative to say other than he was just like, I didn't like the way they looked. And I was like, jeez. Give us a break. We're just having fun.
Yeah, full stop. I mean, part of that perception too was about the having fun, which you had talked about a couple of times about why you're still going and why you still do this. And the whole like, the look and feel of the Ultra Power record and everything since then has looked very fun and light, which I think is a cool part of metal that maybe I'm seeing a little more of these days, which is really fun. So was that a real important thing, like you said, coming out of the pandemic as well, to sort of inject that into what you needed to do, and you were just going to bite off the whole thing? Let's just make the whole thing a whole bunch of fun. Because even your videos, like, for shit's sakes, like, are super fun videos always to watch, especially the last bunch. And so was that just all part of the mix? Like, when you were saying, we're gonna let's do this, let's come back together and let's change this whole thing and be willing to do whatever we want?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially before COVID, we had 3 albums that came out in 3 years, and that run was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun, but it comes down to a lot of work, not fun work. That's no fun. It's negative fun. And so it's like, to see it all sort of get flushed down the toilet with COVID, and then you're like, okay, well, putting that much work into it in the same way, people just, I don't want to do it anymore. That's just kind of like it, especially sort of coming out of COVID. There's still a lot of uncertainty. I think for the most part, it's kind of gone away now, but I mean, who knows? Now there's other things to be worried about, maybe World War III starts or whatever. But for the most part, we're just like, okay, well, at some point you just don't want to add all that extra stress on in your life. And you're like, okay, we're going to come back and it's going to be fun. That's the number one thing that we're going to focus on. So we're just like, we want fun music. We want to look fun. I mean, dressing up in the, way we do, it's fun. It's silly. The thing about metal these days is the only bands that make any kind of splash, the only bands that really get any notoriety or recognizability are all bands that are dressed up. They're either clowns, they're all wearing some kind of weird corpse paint. You have bands like Electric Callboy who all of their videos, they're dressed up, you know, they have a different theme, but they're completely different. They're, you know, doing like parodies of 80s hair metal or whatever, or like Steel Panther, for example. It's everybody's taken their image and just to the extreme. So, I mean, back in 1983, having, you know, a sleeveless t-shirt with the skull and long hair, you know, maybe that was extreme. Like if you see old photos of Metallica from back in the day, it's like that was extreme for the time, I think. You know, they hadn't really experienced that. Or like if you wore a pentagram on your shirt, people are like, whoa, they're, you know, there's that satanic panic that swept the United States in like the late 80s with all these bands.
Yeah.
And so people, you know, Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, like, whoa, that's extreme. But I mean, nobody gives a shit about a pentagram these days. So, I mean, if you want to stand out from the crowd, the reality is you have to have your whole, not just your music, but you have to have your whole brand. And I mean, at a certain point, we've been around long enough that, you know, we've started thinking about our band as a brand, as a business, and all those other things. And it's like, okay, well, how do we get everything a little bit more focused to make more of a splash? And it's like, you know what? Let's have fun with everything we're doing, including how we look, how we brand ourselves. You know, just ads you see, tour posters, whatever. Just have fun with it.
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to throw back and date myself horribly by saying, like, I also grew up in a highly religious home. So I was always walking that fence of the music I listened to, which would have associated with, am I angry or rebellious that I wanted to listen to this music? And yeah, like the whole like American, like the whole fear of like everybody was checking the vinyl for backmasking on every rock and roll record and trying to like demonize all of it, like you said, you know. And then when the spandex hit, like here's the greatest like fun part of this to me is like, and it even happened to me last night. So last night, again, I was going to look up any other place maybe you guys had talked to people and just sort of see what other things had said about in the past. And so I just put in Google, I just put Striker metal band, you know, and after the normal first run of all the hits of things that were, you know, either your own links or very closely related, it starts doing the suggestion little bits, which were full of the 80s Christian metal band Striper, which I'm sure you've encountered a million times in your life. But you have to know, like, so what my parents did when they knew I loved metal and stuff, right? And they're like super Christian parents, was like totally choose to embrace and buy me all the Striper shit, you know, to hope that would keep me on the straight and narrow. So I had the yellow and black, like over the top. Like, so what you're describing now is just funny to me because it literally feels so much like what I was inundated with, which also ironically is a band that's just so close just in enunciation to your own. But they were like so well known for the yellow and black spandex outfits, and they yellow blacked everything, right? The thematic, like their whole stage and the drum kits were customized for the whole thing, and like they all out branded, so that when they released their first album, I think it was early 90s, where they dropped all of it, it was like Kiss dropping makeup in the Christian metal scene, like the impact that for them to not go with the crazy outfits and stuff. So it's really fun for me to see it come all the way back around and see bands that are like, yeah, let's just fully commit to a thing, and it doesn't have to define us forever, right? Like we can just commit to this thing because this is what we want to do right now and who we are right now, which is what it very much sounds like you're identifying with. But
yeah, and honestly, it feels pretty authentic to us because we just were like, well, what do we want to do? You know, we kind of just like got together as a band and said like, what do we want to do? You know, why don't
which is very different than saying what's cool right now and let's do that. It's like choosing to do just what you felt was good.
Yeah, it's like, and it's another thing. It's like how many CD, you know, jackets are we going to be wearing the same thing in? It's just like, it's just, we're over it, right? Let's just try something different, have fun with it. And, you know,
that's the other side benefit of being in it for almost 20 years, right? And being down the road and being a little older. And you've sort of already alluded to that. Like you understand now that a band is a brand and a business and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious then with where you're at right now. I'm just curious, like what's next? Like I think Ultra Power was a really cool album. I personally, like I I watched the video a couple times, because I was a big fan also of wrestling as I kind of grew up and watched wrestling when I was young. So seeing those videos was super fun. And like the Sucks to Suck song, it felt almost like the Kickstart My Heart era of Crew. And that's one of the reasons I went looking for some album reviews and video reviews, because I wanted to see if people were referencing what I was hearing, because I might be really locked into a much more narrow set of reference points in my life. But I don't know whether, is that a crazy reference point to say like songs like that feel kind of like that, just like, let's just, 100 miles an hour from start to finish of the song, let's just go and rip it, kind of really. And it was very tight and very, is that accurate? Am I way off?
Yeah. I mean, that song in particular was sort of like the vibe of it was sort of, like you said, that kind of Motley Crue or like Guns N' Roses Get in the Ring, that kind of song where it's just like, I mean, like we don't even know where it comes from. We just like created that. So it's not like we had a plan, right?
You just started playing.
It's just a song we wrote, right? So we were like, and we knew like in particular that song is a bit of a departure stylistically for us, and it's a bit more like, I don't even know how you would describe it, but just not like so traditionally metal. That there's a little bit more going on in that one. Yeah, we thought, like, I don't know how people are gonna respond necessarily to this song, but it also doesn't matter, because it's like, here it is, and a lot of people love it.
Yeah. So like, what's the ultimate question that ends up becoming like, what's next? Like, there's a couple of things you said that I've really enjoyed and I thought were interesting. Like, Tim, you talked about, this is ultimately, you said earlier, ultimately, we're always trying to point our ship towards bigger things or what we would hope for, to be kind of what the dream situation is, but then you know how to live and work inside the reality, and you run the band like a business so that you can build some sustainability and all those kinds of things into it. So I'm curious what's next for you guys. Do you feel a certain amount of momentum towards another record? Are you, like, you had a really cool tour in 2025. Is there another thing like that in the works, another opportunity for something like that coming around the corner? Because it sounds like it's still fun. What's coming up?
Yeah. We have, we're working on new music as we speak. So we're kind of getting all that, our ducks in a row for that. We had, Ultra Power was a really good album for us. We had lots of good tours and lots of good opportunities. Especially starting again after COVID, it kind of felt almost like we're starting fresh to some degree. So we got new booking agent, new management, all kinds of, stuff like that, behind the scenes stuff that regular people don't even think about. And so, it almost feels like a new band. So it's a lot of fun just kind of coming back to it, being reinvigorated. So we're doing new music. We have new tours coming. I mean, we just had one that was postponed. So, but
again,
hopefully, yes, it was supposed to be. Long story, but anyways, so we're still actively working, and there's lots of stuff in the pipeline. There's a lot of big things coming, as they say.
What's the drummer situation? I mean, obviously, a lot of the publicity stuff shows just 4 of you and what's listed, and I know you've kind of had a few people go in and out. Is that an active search to have a regular full-time member that way, or it just hasn't panned out and you don't feel that's something you have to panic about? Or
yeah, like at the moment we have a guy. We've got Gord. Okay. He's our main guy. So I mean, we haven't necessarily we're a little bit slower with, like, in the past we've been like pretty quick to just be like, you're in, like you're fully in the whole thing, whatever. And we're just a little more like wary now to be like, because it's the thing about being in a band is like it ends up being a lot of work. It's also like, the band's full of like big personalities, like it's just like Pete, our bass player, made his amateur pro wrestling debut the other day. Like,
really,
it's
that's
just
so
like
awesome.
Yeah. And he's wrestling again in February with Top Talent Wrestling here in they do it at Midway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so I mean it's four, you know, kind of interesting guys together. It's not always the easiest to find like the perfect fit. But like at the moment Gord, who's from Edmonton, also is he's our guy. So I guess we'll see. But he's a working professional who owns a business. So it's kind of like, you know, he wants to do it, but it's like, how much of it can you commit to, where the rest of us have sort of organized our lives to be able to be gone for, 3 months out of the year, which if you own your own business or you work for a company, it's a hard sell to be like, hey, by the way, I'm going to be gone for 3 months of the year. Like,
always.
I think that's one thing that especially as we're gotten older and more mature, it's like we really recognize the limitations that being in a band can put on you as an individual. So, I mean, being good at your instrument or whatever is great, but there's so many other things that go into being in a band. And I mean, in the past, when we had all cylinders firing, that could be 3-4 month time commitment in a year, and not everybody has the ability to do that. So like when we're focusing on just keeping it fun and light and fresh, it's like we're just trying to keep the we don't want to get too heavy with forcing people to do commitments to anything too serious. It's just like, hey, if you could do the drums, that's great, we would love it, but I think we just want to keep everything a little bit more light and focus on the fun part. So it's like, you don't have to stress if you have other commitments for this tour that came up. I think that's a little bit of the reason, like Gord was getting married when we did our tour last year with Unleash the Archers, and he's just like, oh, I want to do that tour so bad, but I'm getting married. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. So,
they talked about it.
Yeah.
Like him and his wife talked about it. They're like, it's like, but in the end, it's like, no. You gotta like, Don't push the wedding back for the tour. That's like,
don't
suicide.
ruin your life for the heavy metal. Heavy metal will always be there. I feel like we take sort of like an Ozzy Osbourne approach to people in the band. I mean, I've heard some bad things about how he deals with them, but Zakk Wylde comes and goes, sort of. Everybody's kind of like a house cat. It's like, if you can come in and do the tour and you want to eat your wet food, you can stay in the house and whatever. If you want to go outside, run around and do whatever you want on your own, you can do that too. It's cool. Like I said, we just want to have fun with it. And I mean, in the past, we've had some instances like Simon, our current guitar player, he filled in on bass like a long time ago when our other bass player was gone. He was like on vacation. So we've had some examples of that. And I mean, for like myself and Dan in particular, we've just always been around. We don't do anything else with our lives. But I mean, I feel like, should the opportunity arise, like my brother, our old drummer, Adam, he broke his arm during when we were recording Play to Win. So we got like a different drummer to do it. Or in the Stand in the Fire album, he was also away touring with a different band called Cobra and the Lotus. And we're just like, well, we want to do this. So we really want to record an album. So we're going to hire another drummer, Randy Black, same guy, to come in and do the drums. So I think we've just sort of had a little bit more open policy where it's like, you can do whatever you want. The band might still continue and we might get someone to fill in. So I think that's sort of where we've been at. Just, I feel like some bands are like, oh, you can't do this tour. Well, you're fired forever and you're never coming back. And they just kind of instantly burn the bridge, which I don't think is necessarily, why do that? Just get someone to fill in and whatever.
It's a much more loose definition of a band, right? That you kind of evolve into, and it helps you keep going to be able to kind of loosen that definition up. Well, I mean, I appreciate you guys have hung on the line here for me for a long time. I've had a lot of questions and I appreciate your time. And I don't always do this, but I do want to end by, I don't know why, I just feel like I really want to hear it. I'm curious what your advice would be to the new metal band starting and looking for sort of what's, what are the important things to focus on? Because I think that's probably changed so much since you started between 2007 and 2010. The whole world has changed. The music scene is drastically different. I'm wondering, when you get asked a question like this, kind of what is the main thing you land on that you would tell other bands, like, this is what the world's like now. This is where you might want to put your attention.
For me, like when I first started playing music in high school, it was purely for fun. I didn't give a shit about anything else. It was just fun to play guitar. It was fun to make music. That's it. And I mean, over the years doing albums for me, it's kind of went from like, okay, fun. Now there's some other things to focus on work wise, writing business plans, doing grants, whatever. And it's kind of circled back into fun. And I think that's really the only reason that would ever keep you in music, especially now with AI. Like, there's no reason to do it other than having fun. Like, Spotify is actively putting AI artists and AI music on their platform to prevent you, a real human artist, from getting paid. They're giving those listens to their own AI bots. So I mean, like, the idea of ever getting paid for your recorded music, to me, that's a prehistoric idea these days. So I mean, the only reason to do it is just have fun. Just focus on having fun. If you're having fun, the people who you're around will also have fun. Your fans, your audience, they'll have fun too. So that's my advice. I'm not sure what Dan's is. You probably love it.
That's
Drink
good.
some beers.
That is good advice. I mean, I think that's pretty. Specifically in metal, it's like, it's not like, the rocket ship to making millions that it maybe used to be like almost 40 years ago now, right? Like, so
yeah.
I don't know what my advice would be. Probably similar to Tim's, like just having fun. I mean, it was so easy in the early days to take it so serious and be like, like we said about the open kind of policy now we have of just like, what is a band member, where you're just kind of like, it doesn't need to be that serious. But I think the other thing would be maybe just like investing in yourself, as far as being able to do more. Like, for example, for us, like we did all of our videos ourselves. Like, I edited them. We filmed them as a band. Like, if it wasn't me behind the camera, it was, whoever else was there holding the camera, getting the shots and stuff like that. And it's like, all of these things have, like, the barrier of entry is a lot lower than it used to be, right? Like, even recording yourself, like, most of our albums in the last like 10 years have been mostly recorded at home, and we send them away to get mixed and stuff like that. So it's like, really, the success of your band is like how much of the work you're willing to do yourselves, and like learning the skills you need to actually be able to do those things. Because it's a lot cheaper to hire yourself for $0 than it is to hire someone else for a lot more. And I mean, we've had both things. Like, our last album, we went to a studio with a producer and recorded there, and like, that was, that costs a lot more than doing it ourselves, and it has pros and cons for sure. But I think especially if you're starting out and you don't have like a budget at all, then the more you can do yourself, the better your outcome will be.
Yourself is willing to work crazy hours for very little money, it seems. So I mean, that's great, guys. That's like, I love that. That's really, I think that's great advice. I mean, that's, it's just for guys who have like seen and done as much as you guys have. I think it's really important to listen and hear sort of what your perspective is at this point in your life. And especially that I appreciate that you're not, too jaded older rock stars on the line, who are just, are kind of tired of the old tropes and the old shit. And, but you guys definitely carry a fresh perspective and a desire to kind of keep the original spirit in it, which I can totally sense. And I totally love that. So I appreciate the time you guys gave me here. I appreciate the conversation. I look forward to hearing what's next. I really, like I said before, I really, really enjoyed like the direction you took on Ultra Power. And I think it makes me really, really interested to hear what's next. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of that, and want everybody to check out Striker and pay attention and see what we get this year.
Nice.
Cool, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Hey, I'm Alexi. Stick around for Post Fame with me and my dad. Yeah, ready?
Oh, no, that's a loud one. I could see all the bars go up.
Okay, a different one?
No, I don't want another mic test. No, we're totally fine without another mic test. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know what's so funny about that. Are you cozy?
I'm really cozy.
You look really cozy.
Thanks.
Welcome to Post Fame.
On Riverside.
Well, oh yeah, we're trying. Well, you didn't have to well, I guess that's just going fully behind the scenes. Yeah, whatever. Just,
I'm drawing the curtain.
I'm trying.
Back.
You are. We're just doing some recording on a different platform and trying some things out. So, we could be re-recording this. So you need to prep yourself.
I'm locked in.
So you need to lock it in. Or
I don't know if I can
like
be entertaining twice.
Well, do I make the joke about whether you were the first time?
Oh, okay, no.
Okay. So guess what? This episode's about?
This week on the podcast, the Edmonton Metal Masters Striker!
I kind of hate it.
I know, it's just so good. So I went through, I've been using AI for some summarizations and whatnot. Anyhow, it offered to make me a track about Striker this week.
Beautiful.
And I'm a yes man in 2026.
Yeah.
So why not?
That's so funny. Actually, you know what's crazy? You're using AI not to make a song. That was an offering that AI just had for you. But
what?
Let me finish.
Okay.
I was gonna say my point that I made, what the point that I took away from the podcast, one of the quotes, he's talking about AI and the music world.
Okay.
And stuff. And so I think it's kind of funny that it just happened to be that AI made you a song.
It just happened to make a song.
And you used it.
Maybe it knew because I fed the transcript. I fed the
did.
whole transcript in, and maybe it thought it was being cheeky.
I did, probably. Look, I even have screenshots of the transcript today, so I remember what I'm talking about.
Oh, good for you.
Yep.
I told you about how I was asking it for help in doing some writing the other day. And then it gave me a style of a blog post, right? And then I told it, I need to maybe make it a little more like myself because I'm a little more verbose. And then it told me, you're right, you are verbose. And I thought,
mine's been coming from my throat.
And I thought, that's why are you saying all that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing I did today at work was, I don't know if you saw, they've lost millions of users, ChatGPT, over just political stuff.
Oh,
right now,
yeah.
in the last couple of days. And because Claude came out with some really cool stuff that it doesn't do. So the combination. Anyhow, so I thought, well, I got a lot of stuff in there. I want to at least make sure, but there's no way to just back it up. So I was following all these instructions and prompts on how you would move all of your chat conversations and GPTs over maybe to Gemini or Claude. And so I gave it this specific set of prompts basically to inform in a structured context way, Gemini, how to work with me.
Oh.
So it's basically one AI telling the other AI, it would be like saying you moving to a new office and saying to the other, so this is how to work with Lexi. So it was telling it how to work with me.
That's nuts.
Telling it what I prefer and favor and my preferences and how
getting read like a book.
It was really weird. I was like, you don't know me, but
it does.
Yeah. Anyhow, welcome to Post Fame again. The episode on Striker.
Yeah.
And heavy metal. So this is
but unique.
Yeah, I mean it's going outside of
what we've had.
Where we've kind of lived for a long time. And again, obviously where we've lived for a long time has a lot to do with where my normal reach and access to some people are to a degree. So there's a bit of a pocket and I've always kind of wanted to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that these guys.
It's a nice avenue out.
Said yes, and they've got like so much experience, and they've had so much quote unquote success. Like we kind of talked about it in the episode about the truth, the behind the curtain with them too, since we'll do a little callback. Anyhow, you have a whole bunch of pages of notes. I'm curious sort of.
It's a transcript. It's your transcript.
I'm sort of just curious what you had some takeaways, because I saw you have some yellow highlights.
I do. Yeah, because there's a lot of words and I'm just one girl. What was I even yapping about? Oh, okay. It was that. And I think it's kind of funny that I think it just ties into the podcast well, because we've had a lot of conversations both about AI, music and AI, and then also like passion projects and like music and stuff, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like we've had a lot of people who, take everything very seriously on the podcast, and like, they decided to go all in on music, and so they do everything in their power and they're working all the time. You know what I mean? We've had those people. And then sometimes you'd have people who are like, I do this for fun and I'm not too serious about it. We've had the whole spectrum. So it's kind of back on that topic, but the minutes make sense because I'm jumping an hour, but around 25, 26, Dan was saying, he said, even today, it's like the band feels more like a passion project than anything. And he was kind of like, you guys were talking about how it feels like a dopamine addict, to just enjoy it. And then back, different conversation, but at an hour 26, so like a full 1 hour later, you guys were talking about something different, and then started talking about how like they originated and how it was fun for them, and then like kind of their journey. And then he actually wraps back and says, and it's kind of circled back into fun. And he said, I think that's the only reason you keep in music, especially now with AI. Like, there's no reason to do it other than fun, when Spotify and like streaming services who you are like relying on to produce music and have it get out to the world are like themselves making AI music. And how he kind of like, that's just like a very unique perspective, because I've heard so much about AI entering the music scene, and it's just all been like a lot of hate, which is very understandable. And I think I kind of joined that bandwagon, but it was interesting for someone to be like, yes, but aside from that, like he didn't even touch on like everyone hates that AI is in music. He just totally didn't even touch on that. He just moved to the we started this for fun, and now like especially with this component, it's for fun and it's a passion project, and like they take it seriously, obviously, but like it's really nice to like hear an artist be like, we started this for fun. We're still doing it for fun. Yeah. Like at all the levels. Like he said when he first started playing guitar, that was because he enjoyed it. And now like the level he's at, it's because he enjoys it. And I'm like, that's refreshing. Like it's kind of like the nice both and that we haven't heard so much.
No, you're right. Well, I mean, speaking of such, like AI also, when it just asked me if it would like to summarize what Dan and Tim's tips for up and coming bands from their 20 years of experience would be. And I said, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And the very first one was prioritize fun over fame. And it says, with the rise of AI and shrinking streaming payouts. So it's everything you were just talking about.
Yeah.
If you aren't enjoying the process, the grind will burn you out.
Am I AI?
Yeah. The second tip that it pulled from them was master the DIY skill set. Lower the barrier to entry by learning to do all the things: record, film, edit, content yourself, hire yourself, basically, outsource yourself. So that was, I remember that part of the conversation very well. Invest in your brand was another tip. In a crowded market, that music isn't just enough,
Did
which is a very big point. Oh yeah, so much. Yeah. Adopt a quote unquote house cat membership policy. Don't burn bridges over scheduling. If a member can't make a tour due to life commitments, use a fill-in, keep things going. Anyhow, that's an interesting sort of like extraction from the conversation. Build your own infrastructure. Don't wait for a major label. Stryker found success by managing their own grants and visas and business plans and keeping control of their own ship, which is very true.
Like,
and then ignore the genre police, which was big for them because especially I wanted to get into it with them about, there's so many subgenres to metal or hard rock or whatever you want to like start with at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got into with them is I'm like, it felt to me like compared to other genres that have subgenres, like it felt like the fans and even the artists themselves, maybe different eras, but maybe all the eras got pretty precious about it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know their take on it. And so, they were very much about, don't be afraid to like mix things up. Authenticity is your own tastes mixing, not strict compliance to rules. So
I like that.
So I like that. So that was Stryker's Guide to the Modern Metal Industry. Apparently that's what Gemini's calling it. I think I'm going to put this out as a social media post.
Yeah,
for fun
you should make a cute little Instagram post.
Yeah, I think so. So there was like,
and the background of it should be that song.
Yes, it should be that song. I agree. Because you love this song so much.
2 decades of shredding, touring the world, and earning that Juno Gold.
Where does he scream?
And the secrets behind their new album, Ultra Power.
Yeah, that part.
That's how I'm gonna start describing myself. What is it? Something of.
What?
What did he say? Something of shredding.
Yeah, I don't know what he said exactly.
What's 10 years?
Oh, 2 decades.
Yeah, that's
2 decades of shredding.
I'm gonna start describing myself. 2 decades of shredding.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I have such respect for these guys and the difficult market that they had to break through in. Part of the conversation was about, like different genres have had more access to, the way that you sort of, the traditional way for decades in Canada that rock and roll or bands or whoever made it was just grueling long drives back and forth.
Yeah.
But that was still like limiting to the kind of bands that were more widely accessible, right? So the more niche things get, so there would be less venues to play. So, being a Western Canadian band, staying from Edmonton, out of Edmonton, just in some ways, like every band, the part where they get lucky with their connections to Germany and some of the people over there, along with just being really good and then taking advantage of opportunities and working hard, kind of got them all that success. Not easy to do. So lots of respect for them, and especially that they're still playing, still having fun, still writing music right now even. So that was a fun episode to do. Also having a couple of guys in it, always kind of changes
it's fun.
The energy. So I want to keep trying to do some of that. And
Group sesh.
Speaking of the hard rock and roll, I went to see Silver Sun Pickups last night.
Is that hard rock and roll?
It kind of is. Like, it gets pretty, I mean, they've been playing for like, I was surprised, over 20 years too.
Oh.
I didn't realize. So like, you get kind of a wider, they experiment with more when their career is that long.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've always thought like he's one of the most unheralded ever talked about guitar players in rock and roll, because he plays like such a unique style, like lots of layers and atmospheric stuff, along with just super heavy riffs. And he's so good, and he does it all by himself. Like, he's a real master of the layering, even live.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so as a guitar player, I'm a total geek and nerd for his music, and I'm watching their shows. So that was like really fun last night, and reminded me just how much I love like their music. Like, when you think about it, like maybe you have this, like a band that you realize that you really love, but you never talk about, like, nobody probably would know that you like love this band.
Oh.
But that you like absolutely love this band. Like, when their songs come on, you always like are excited. Anyhow, like,
this is them for you?
Yeah, I just realized, like, I've seen them like 3 times, maybe 4 times now, and I don't miss them if I have a chance to see them. There's just something really special and unique about them. So I enjoyed that. So I got a little dose to go along with this of some good, like, heavy riffing, reminding me of how I learned to play guitar was cutting my teeth on pretty heavy music.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget the first time somebody hooked me up. I had already been playing guitar for a little bit. And then I went with my oldest sister to visit one of her friends, this guy named Steve, and he had like a guitar, an amp, and he had like and it was called like the metal pedal. It was called metal. It's like this famous Boss pedal, black. Yeah. It just says metal pedal on it.
I like that.
And it was just that crunchy buzz sound of a guitar. And he's just like, play these power chords like this and then kick the pedal. And I turn the pedal and all of a sudden I'm making heavy metal sounds. And I remember the rush.
You're like, I love this.
I was pretty young and I was pretty much in love with that sound for a long time.
That's awesome.
Fun times.
For real.
For reals. Okay. Thanks for your hot takes.
Thanks. I'm excited to see the...
What are you excited to see? How I have published the
20 years of shredding.
The 20 years of shredding song. Yeah, I'm going to get that out. I think social media will probably be the best way to put that out. That's going to be fun. Yeah.
Kill it.
Okay. Love you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.